Hello, my amazing students, and welcome to JBC English Learning Academy. This is a place where English feels lighter, not heavier. If learning English has ever made you feel tired, overwhelmed, or stuck, you're not alone. Many people don't quit English because they are lazy or incapable. They quit because they are exhausted. Too many rules, too much pressure, too many expectations. This series is not here to push you harder. It's here to help you breathe again. We're going to talk about burnout, not as a failure, but as a signal that your brain needs a different approach, one that works with your energy, not against it. You don't need to study more. You don't need to force motivation. You don't need discipline that hurts. You need balance. You need rhythm. You need a way of learning that fits into your life instead of fighting it. So don't take notes. Don't try to remember everything. Just listen. Let these words settle while you walk, rest, or simply stay still. English doesn't grow through pressure. It grows through consistency, comfort, and trust. This series is called How to Avoid English Learning Burnout, and it's about learning in a way that keeps you moving forward without draining you. Let's begin. Part 1. Burnout in English learning doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds quietly. At first, you feel motivated. You watch videos, study grammar, try to improve fast. Then little by little, English starts to feel heavy. You open a lesson and feel tired before you even begin. You listen to English and feel guilty instead of curious. That feeling is not a lack of discipline. It's a sign that your learning system is working against you. Most burnout comes from pressure, not from English itself. Pressure to improve quickly. Pressure to speak perfectly. Pressure to follow a plan that doesn't fit your life. When learning becomes a duty instead of an experience, the brain resists. Resistance turns into fatigue. Fatigue turns into avoidance. The first step to avoiding burnout is understanding one simple truth. Your brain is not designed for constant effort. It is designed for rhythm, effort, and rest, focus, and release. When English learning ignores this rhythm, burnout becomes inevitable. Many learners try to learn English the same way they work. Long sessions, high concentration, clear goals, deadlines. This works for tasks, but language is not a task. Language is an environment. You don't force yourself to live in your native language. You are surrounded by it. English needs the same treatment. Burnout often appears when learners confuse intensity with progress. They think more hours means better results. But the brain doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards consistency and safety. When English feels stressful, the brain closes. When it feels safe, the brain absorbs. This is why learning English in a relaxed way is not lazy. It is intelligent. Relaxation is not the opposite of progress. It is the condition for progress. Another cause of burnout is comparison. Learners compare themselves to others online, to native speakers, to people who seem to improve faster. Comparison creates impatience. Impatience creates frustration. Frustration drains energy. Energy loss leads to burnout. English learning is deeply personal. Everyone has a different background, different exposure, different emotional relationship with language. When you compare, you ignore your own rhythm. Losing your rhythm is one of the fastest ways to burn out. Burnout also comes from unclear purpose. When learners don't know why they are learning English, every effort feels heavy. Motivation without meaning fades quickly. But when English connects to your life, your interests, your identity, energy returns naturally. This is why learning English through content you enjoy matters. Stories, podcasts, topics you care about. When English becomes a bridge to something meaningful, it stops feeling like work. Another hidden cause of burnout is perfectionism, wanting to say everything correctly, wanting to sound fluent, immediately, wanting to understand every word. Perfectionism creates constant tension. Tension blocks enjoyment. Without enjoyment, the brain disconnects. Language is imperfect by nature. Native speakers hesitate, repeat themselves, and make mistakes. Fluency is not correctness. It is comfort. When you allow imperfection, you release pressure. When pressure disappears, energy returns. Burnout is also connected to how you measure progress. Many learners look for dramatic improvement. They want proof, big changes, clear results. But language grows slowly, quietly. Progress is often invisible until one day it surprises you. If you only trust visible progress, you will feel stuck even when you are improving. This feeling of being stuck is exhausting. Learning to trust small changes protects you from burnout. Another important point is that learning English should not always be active. Active learning is useful, but constant activity drains mental resources. Passive listening, relaxed exposure, and background English are essential. They allow learning without effort. When English is always associated with work, your brain avoids it. When English becomes part of your environment, burnout loses its power. Avoiding burnout does not mean stopping. It means adjusting, reducing pressure, changing rhythm, reconnecting with curiosity. English grows best when you feel calm enough to stay with it. Burnout is not failure. It is feedback. It tells you something needs to change. When you listen to that message instead of fighting it, learning becomes sustainable again. In the next part, we will talk about how to design an English routine that protects your energy, how to learn without forcing motivation, and how to keep moving forward even on low energy days. For now, remember this. English should fit your life, not dominate it. Progress comes from balance, not exhaustion. Part 2. 1 of the biggest reasons burnout returns again and again is that many learners depend on motivation. They wait to feel motivated before learning. And when motivation disappears, learning stops. This creates a cycle of intensity and collapse. Strong effort followed by complete silence. This cycle is exhausting, and it slowly disconnects you from English. The truth is simple. Motivation is unstable. Energy changes. Every day, life interferes. If your English routine depends on motivation, burnout is almost guaranteed.
What
Protects you is not motivation. It is gentleness and flexibility. A burnout safe routine is not a strict schedule. It is a minimum commitment. Something so light that you can do it even on your worst days. 5 minutes of listening. One short audio. One familiar voice. When the minimum is easy, consistency becomes natural. Many learners quit because they think learning only counts if it is serious. They believe short listening sessions are useless. This belief destroys continuity. In reality, short exposure keeps the connection alive.
the
Connection matters more than intensity. Think of English like a relationship. You don't disappear for weeks and then try to reconnect with force.
you stay in.
Touch regularly, even briefly. This regular contact builds comfort. Comfort prevents burnout. Another important factor is decision fatigue. Every day, learners ask themselves what to study, which video to watch, which method to follow. Too many choices drain mental energy. Burnout often starts with too many decisions. This is why having one main source of English matters. One podcast, one voice, one style. Familiarity reduces decision-making. When your brain knows what to expect, it relaxes. Relaxation increases absorption.
Routine
Does not mean boredom. It means stability. Within stability, variation
can exist.
but the foundation stays familiar. This familiarity acts like a safe place your brain can return to. Another cause of burnout is guilt.
Guilt
For missing days. Guilt for not studying enough. Guilt for forgetting words. Guilt turns learning into punishment. Punishment destroys curiosity. Language. Learning should never feel like something you owe. It should feel like something you receive. When guilt appears, energy disappears. To avoid burnout, you must allow breaks without judgment. Breaks are part of learning. Rest consolidates memory. When you stop seeing rest as failure, burnout loses
power.
Another hidden burnout trigger is trying to learn everything. Vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, listening, speaking, writing all at once. This creates overload. Overload leads to frustration. Your brain prefers focus one main skill at a time. Listening can carry everything else naturally. When listening improves, speaking follows, vocabulary grows, grammar settles, listening is efficient. Burnout decreases when you simplify.
One
Focus, one direction, one habit. Another important idea is learning without tracking. Tracking progress constantly increases pressure, numbers, streaks, levels. While tracking can motivate some people, it drains others. If tracking makes you anxious, let it go. Progress does not need constant measurement.
it needs time.
Burnout also comes from learning content that feels artificial. Textbook dialogues, forced exercises.
If
English feels fake, your brain disconnects. Authentic content keeps interest alive. Interest is fuel. Without fuel, burnout arrives. Another mistake is forcing output too early. Trying to speak before your brain feels ready creates stress. Stress associates English with danger. Danger triggers avoidance. Speaking should feel like release, not performance. Listening builds readiness naturally. When the system is ready, speaking appears without force. Another burnout pattern is self-criticism. Saying things like, I'm bad at English, or I'm slow. Language is not a talent. It is exposure. Self-criticism creates emotional exhaustion. Changing your inner dialogue protects energy. Instead of judging, observe. Instead of forcing, allow. Burnout also appears when English has no emotional reward. If learning feels empty, the brain resists. Emotional reward can be curiosity, enjoyment, or a sense of connection. Listening to a familiar voice creates companionship. Podcasts reduce loneliness in learning. This emotional safety matters more than technique. Another key idea is rhythm. Not daily pressure, but weekly flow. Some days are light, some days are deeper. This flexibility keeps learning alive long term. Burnout is not solved by discipline alone. Discipline without care leads to collapse. Care creates sustainability. English learning is a long journey. Treating it like a sprint burns energy quickly. Treating it like a walk allows endurance. In the next part, we will talk about how to recover when burnout has already started, how to rebuild confidence gently, and how to restart without pressure or guilt. For now, remember this. You don't need strong motivation. You need a light habit. Consistency comes from kindness. Part 3. When burnout has already started, the biggest mistake is trying to fix it with force. Many learners feel behind, so they try to compensate. They study longer, push harder, and demand more from themselves. This reaction feels logical, but it deepens the problem. Burnout is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of recovery. The first step in recovery is permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to do less. Permission to change the approach without guilt. Guilt keeps the nervous system tense. Tension blocks learning. Recovery begins when pressure disappears. When you feel burned out, your brain associates English with stress. To change that association, English must return in a non-threatening form. Not exercises, not tests, just sound, calm listening, familiar voices, low effort. This is why restarting with listening only is powerful. Listening does not demand performance. You don't need to answer. You don't need to respond. You just receive. This restores safety. Safety is the foundation of learning. Without it, the brain stays defensive. With it, curiosity returns. Another important step is reducing expectations. Burnout often comes from unrealistic timelines, wanting fluency in months, wanting fast results. Recovery requires patience. You are not starting from zero. You are rebuilding trust with the language. Trust grows.
Slowly.
Every calm listening session sends a message to your brain. English is safe. English is familiar. English is not an emergency. At this stage, progress may feel invisible. That is normal. Healing comes before growth. You don't see muscles rebuilding immediately. You feel stability first. English recovery works the same way. Another helpful strategy is repetition of comforting content. Content you already understand.
Partially.
Familiar topics, familiar rhythm, familiar tone.
New content can wait.
Familiarity rebuilds confidence. Confidence is fragile after burnout. Protect it. Choose content that feels manageable. When something feels too hard, stop. Stopping is not failure.
It
is regulation. Another important element is removing deadlines. Burnout thrives on urgency. Recovery needs timelessness. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you're nervous.
System is.
English learning is not linear. There are pauses, plateaus, and rest periods. Accepting this reality reduces emotional fatigue. It is also important to change the internal narrative. Burnout often brings harsh self-talk. Thoughts like I failed or I wasted time. These thoughts drain energy. Replace them with neutral observation. I needed rest.
I'm
adjusting. Language learning improves when emotional load decreases. Another recovery tool is changing the environment. Listening in different places. Walking while listening. Listening before sleep. Associating English with calm activities changes the emotional context. Environment shapes learning more than effort. Recovery also means letting go of output pressure. You do not need to speak to recover. Speaking will return when readiness returns. Forcing output too early reactivates stress. When speaking comes back naturally, it feels lighter. Words come without effort. That is the sign of recovery. Another important idea is self-compassion. Self-compassion does not mean lowering standards forever. It means respecting current capacity. Capacity changes. Burnout reduces capacity temporarily. Respecting that protects long-term progress. Recovery is not going backwards. It is maintenance.
As
confidence returns, curiosity returns.
2.
You start noticing phrases again. You feel interest instead of resistance. This is a good sign. Follow interest, not obligation. Another mistake during recovery is switching methods constantly. Burnout often pushes learners to search
for the perfect method.
This creates more cognitive load. Choose one simple method and stay with it. Stability heals faster than novelty. You may also notice emotional resistance appear unexpectedly. Some days you don't want to listen at
all.
That is okay. Forcing creates backlash. Skipping gently preserves the relationship. Recovery respects emotional signals. Another important step is celebrating small reconnections. Understanding a sentence without effort. Enjoying a podcast moment, feeling relaxed while listening. These moments matter. They are signs of healing. Burnout recovery is quiet. There is no dramatic breakthrough. There is a soft return of comfort. In the next part, we will talk about how to build a long-term, burnout-proof learning style, how to protect energy while still improving, and how to keep English as a supportive presence in your life. For now, remember this. You don't recover by pushing.
You recover by softening.
English will meet you where you are. Part 4. Once recovery begins and English no longer feels heavy, the next step is protection. Burnout often returns not because learners stop learning, but because they slowly rebuild the same pressure that caused exhaustion in the first place. A burnout-proof approach is not about doing more. It is about protecting energy while still allowing
growth.
One of the most important protections is accepting seasons. There are seasons of high energy and seasons of low energy. In high energy seasons, you may listen more, engage more, and feel curious. In low energy seasons, you may only manage light exposure. Both are valid. Progress does not disappear. During slower seasons, it consolidates. Burnout appears when learners expect the same performance every day. Humans don't work that way. Language learning especially needs flexibility. When you respect your natural UPS and downs, English stays sustainable. Another key protection is separating identity from performance. Many learners tie their self-worth to how well they speak or understand English. On good days, they feel confident. On bad days, they feel discouraged. This emotional roller coaster drains energy. English is a skill, not a measure of value. When you detach identity from performance, mistakes lose emotional weight. Learning becomes lighter. Burnout also comes from treating English as unfinished business, something hanging over your head, something you should be better at by now. This mental weight creates constant tension. A burnout-proof mindset treats English as ongoing, not urgent. There is no finish line chasing you. You are allowed to grow slowly. Another protective habit is keeping English in the background of life instead of the center. When English dominates your attention, it becomes stressful. When it quietly accompanies you, it becomes natural. Background listening is powerful here. Podcasts while walking, English audio while resting. No pressure to focus intensely. This keeps exposure alive without draining energy. Another important protection is limiting external noise. Online advice, methods, trends, and promises of fast fluency can create confusion and pressure. Too many voices pull you in different directions. Choose one approach that feels calm and
trustworthy.
Stay with it. Consistency beats novelty when it comes to energy. Burnout also grows when learners constantly test themselves. Testing creates judgment. Judgment creates stress. Stress drains motivation. Instead of testing, observe. Notice what feels easier than before. Notice when phrases feel familiar. Observation is gentle. Testing is aggressive. Another protective factor is redefining success. Success is not speaking perfectly. It is staying connected. It is continuing without resentment. It is keeping English as part of your life.
When
Success is defined as continuity, burnout loses its power. Language learning should not feel like self-discipline. It should feel like self-support. Supporting yourself builds endurance. Disciplining yourself builds resistance. Another burnout-proof idea is trusting delayed results. Repetition works quietly. Progress often appears later, unexpectedly. When you trust this delay, impatience decreases. Impatience is one of the strongest fuels of burnout. You can also protect energy by reducing output pressure. Speaking is important, but it should emerge naturally. Forced speaking drains energy. Natural speaking restores confidence. When listening has built enough familiarity, speaking feels like release, not effort. Another key protection is emotional neutrality. Some days you feel inspired, some days you
feel nothing.
both are okay. Learning does not need emotional intensity to
Work.
calm. Exposure is enough. Burnout also decreases when English stops being associated with obligation.
Replace I.
Must with I choose. Choice restores
Autonomy.
autonomy, increases motivation. When you choose English even lightly, your brain cooperates. Another protective habit is ending sessions early. Stopping before fatigue appears teaches your brain that English is safe. Ending while you still feel comfortable builds positive association. Long sessions that end in exhaustion teach avoidance. Protecting energy also means respecting mental boundaries.
If
Something feels overwhelming, it is okay to step back. Pushing through discomfort repeatedly leads to burnout. Growth does not require constant discomfort.
mild.
Challenge is enough. A burnout-proof learner listens more than they push. They adjust instead of forcing.
They
Stay curious instead of critical. English learning becomes part of life,
not a battle against time.
in the final part, we will bring everything together and talk about how to keep English as a long-term companion, how to enjoy learning again, and how to move forward without fear of burnout returning.
4.
Now, remember this. Burnout is prevented by protection, not pressure. Your energy is the most valuable resource you have. Part 5. At the deepest level, avoiding burnout is not about learning techniques. It is about relationship. Your relationship with English determines whether learning feels nourishing or draining. When English feels like a demand, burnout waits nearby. When English feels like a companion, it stays with you for life.
A
Healthy relationship with English is built on trust,
trust that progress is
happening even when you don't see it. Trust that listening counts.
trust that
Rest is part of growth. When trust exists, urgency disappears. When urgency disappears, burnout loses its grip.
1.
Of the most important long-term shifts is letting go of the idea of arrival. There is no moment where English is finished. Native speakers are still learning their language. Fluency is not a destination. It is a way of moving comfortably inside the language. When you stop chasing an end point, learning becomes lighter. You are no longer running towards something. You are walking with something. Another key element is enjoyment without guilt. Enjoyment does not need justification. You don't need to turn every podcast into a lesson. You don't need to prove productivity. Enjoyment is productive by itself because it keeps you connected. Connection is the real goal. Burnout often returns when learners start judging themselves again, judging speed, judging accent, judging mistakes. Judgment tightens the mind.
Tightness
Blocks flow. Flow requires openness. Replacing judgment with curiosity changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why am I still bad at this?" you ask, "How does this sound?" Or, "Why do people say it this way?" Curiosity invites learning. Judgment shuts it down. Another long-term protection is letting English adapt to your life instead of rearranging your life for English.
Some
Weeks are busy, some weeks are calm. English can fit both if you allow it.
5
Minutes of listening is still English. One familiar voice is still progress. Small contact prevents disconnection. When English becomes flexible, it becomes sustainable. Another important idea is allowing identity to shift
slowly.
You don't need to declare yourself fluent. You simply start acting like someone who understands English more than before. This quiet identity shift is powerful. You begin to choose English content naturally. You don't avoid it. You don't force it. It's just there. Burnout disappears when English stops being a project and starts being a presence. You also learn to recognize early signs of fatigue. When listening starts feeling heavy, you don't push. You adjust. You switch content. You lower effort. You protect the relationship. This awareness prevents burnout before it grows. Another protective habit is gratitude. Not forced positivity, but simple appreciation. Appreciation for understanding a sentence, for enjoying a moment, for staying connected. Appreciation softens the nervous system. Soft nervous systems learn better. Over time, English becomes part of your inner world. You hear phrases in your head. You think small thoughts in English. This is not effort. This is integration. Integration is the opposite of burnout. You also learn that missing days does not erase progress. Gaps are normal. Returning gently matters more than returning aggressively. Aggressive returns often restart the burnout cycle. Gentle returns rebuild continuity. English learning becomes something you return to, not something you restart. Another important realization is that growth does not always feel like growth. Sometimes it feels like calm. Sometimes it feels like stability. Sometimes it feels like less anxiety. These are signs of deep progress.